The Prophet Experts. Who is responsible for Israel-Palestine? Who is responsible for the death of the Middle East peace process? Israel, the Palestinians, or the international community? Someone need to contact Serbian President Boris Tadic for advice and courage. President Barack Obama's latest statement on the Middle East has sparked waves of criticism from both sides. Neither the Arabs nor the Israelis seemed to be happy with his statement. Either way, he was going to anger someone anyhow. I just wondered if he employed the right tactics. In my opinion, if you already knew regardless of what you said someone was going to be pissed off, it would have made more sense to piss off your enemies, not your friends. What's the brother doing stepping into the Middle East minefield close to an election? The Middle East is a minefield for any United States politician, therefore if you decide to step into it, you must know that you might get blown up. It would make a bit of sense to go in there with protective clothing just to lessen the impact of the blast. By that I mean President Obama should have adopted George Bush's tactic, make a stand and choose sides. He cannot stand in the Middle East minefield and be pulled by both sides, he will get blown off fast. When he took out Osama bin Laden, all of us brothers were happy that the brother had come to life. He had managed to shed the image of an indecisive leader to this bold and courageous leader of the free world who is prepared to act decisively when the need arises. To begin to waver on the Middle East places his decisive image into doubt again. Let me state this fact clearly from the onset: the only country with the political and economic clout to make peace in the Middle East is the United States. But this cannot be done if the United States leaders are afraid to stand the moral high ground and call a spade a spade. There are two things that are hindering the peace process in the Middle East. Firstly, that the United States is supposed to take the leadership role in the process, yet it has abnegated its role to the confused group of diplomats called the Quartet. The United Nations, the European Union or Russia would never bring peace to the Middle East. Left with them, the process would go on forever. It is the United States that will need to step up to the mark and say this is it and this is how it is going to be done. Secondly, the international community, especially the Europeans, are making peace impossible by blindly supporting the Palestinians. It is true that the Palestinian people are suffering, that they need all the help and support they can get, but the Palestinian leaders are responsible for the suffering of their own people, not Israel. The leaders of Palestine are stuck in the past and they are unwilling to shed their old ideologies. They are basically functioning in the 21st century with the 19th century mentality. Einstein said, "The thinking that has brought us this far has created some problems this thinking cannot solve." The thinking that has brought the people of Palestine so far has created nothing but suffering for the Palestinian people, and that same type of thinking cannot solve their problem. They need fresh thinking. They need to think like people living in the 21st century. 19th century thinking will not do in this century. They are still dreaming of defeating Israel. That is a tired old Arab myth that shall never come to pass. For a start, Israel has the best fighting force in the world and the most technologically advanced in the Middle East. How do they expect in a million years to defeat such an army? Secondly, Israel has the best intelligence in the world. None of the West's intelligence come anywhere close to the Israeli Mossad. How can the Arab imagine they can ever defeat such a country? When the United States Navy SEALs conducted the operations that took out bin Laden, there was this whole hurrah about how good they are. They are good, I must give that to them. But the Israelis carry out those kinds of missions almost on a monthly basis with no Lord fanfare. As early as this past February they went into Dubai and took out a Hamas leader. They have been assassinating Hamas leaders all around the Arab world and Europe for a long time now. They have entered Lebanon to extract Palestinian leaders, entered Palestinian territory and extracted their leaders on many occasions. It was the same forces that advanced into Uganda and freed Israeli hostages held by Palestinians. Remember Munich, when Israeli athletes were killed? What happened to those who committed those acts? You need the answer. Dead. Just for the record, they were all killed by the Mossad. I brought up the above example to highlight the fact that the Palestinians and the Arab world as a whole must realize that for the next 500 years, they can never defeat Israel. If that is how long they want to wait for their independence, then good luck to them. What Palestinian leaders need to do is step up to the mark like Nelson Mandela did in South Africa. If anyone thought it was easy for Mandela to open negotiation with his oppressors, they need to read his book, The Long Walk to Freedom. According to him, when he started negotiating with the South African government, he did not even let his other fellow political prisoners know until the talks were at an advanced stage. When he became president, I am sure there were times when he wanted to stick a needle in the ribs of his former oppressors. But he knew he did not have the power to do it. Black might have the political power, but the economic power and the skills to generate wealth are still in the hands of whites. To try to stick a needle in their ribs like Robert Mugabe did in Zimbabwe would be sticking the needle in the ribs of his people. One very important point that I would like to make here, that I hope anyone reading these articles will pay attention to, is this: Mandela served for one term as president and left. He could have stayed in power for life and black South Africa would be pleased. However, Mandela knew that he would not be serving his country right. Mandela was a great liberation fighter, but could he have been a great president of a free South Africa? That was left to be seen, but records from other independent African leaders do not leave an encouraging story. Most of those leaders spent years in the bushes or prison fighting for freedom for their people, and when they finally gained the freedom, they did not know what to do with the freedom. One smart thing the South Africans did was, while they had people in the trenches fighting for freedom, they had the likes of Mr. Mbeki and co attending school abroad, because they understood that when they achieved their freedom they wanted to know what to do with it. This is a very critical point because it is what sank most liberated countries. They did not plan for the day after. The Palestinians did not plan for the day after, and they are still making the same mistake. Therefore, what they have are leaders who simply do not understand how the world works and therefore are incapable of making strategic decisions. In 2000, the late Yasser Arafat had an opportunity to clinch an historic deal for his people when then Israeli PM Ehud Barak was willing to make concessions to the Palestinians that no Israeli Prime Minister had ever made, and he walked away from it. He would have lived his dream of witnessing the creation of a Palestinian state, something he never lived to see. This generation of Palestinian leaders are making similar colossal mistakes. As I was writing this article, I took a break to watch CNN's Piers Morgan tonight. The discussions were on the financial crisis. The most interesting statement he made was the banking industry's catastrophic failure caused millions of people to lose their jobs, life savings, homes, and millions are unemployed as a result, and not a single person went to prison over it. To add insult to injury, these same bankers are now getting their $1 million bonus again from money made from government bailout. Millions of people are suffering, thousands have lost their life savings that they worked their entire lives for, and not a single one of those guys who caused the misery ever got punished. Quite the contrary, instead they are being rewarded with fat bonuses. What can anyone do? Nothing, because that is the way the world is structured. That is the way it has been since the beginning of time, and that is the way it is going to continue to be. The International Criminal Court was set up to try anyone suspected of war crime. Do you for one moment imagine anyone from the United States or UK would ever face that court? Do you think they will someday haul the United States President or any European leader in front of that court? It would never happen. When attempts were made to indict former United States Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld in Belgium, the United States threatened to remove NATO HQ from Belgium. Therefore, Belgium was forced to change their law to accommodate him. It is not my position to say whether it is good or bad, right or wrong. That is the Pope, they say. All I am saying is, this is the reality of things and we have to accept it. There are things that can be changed and there are things that cannot be changed. People who are smart enough have learned to accept this as the reality of life. Even God himself did not create a just world. If he wanted a just world, he would not have abundance of oil in Saudi Arabia and only rocks in many African countries. So the Palestinians need to get real. They are a defeated people. This is how the world works. Since the beginning of time, lands have been acquired through wars. They probably need a lesson from Egyptian Nasser. To pursue peace with Israel was not an easy decision for Nasser to make, but he knew in the end it would have been better for his country. Even though he paid the ultimate price for the decision, Egypt as a country is better for it today. Jordan is no worse off either. Another example of brave leadership is Gerry Adams and the Northern Ireland leaders. In their bones they will never want to make peace with the British. However, they understand that a united Ireland is a dream that will never happen in their lifetime. Therefore they did what all good leaders do: they bit the bullet and sat on the table with the Unionists, guided by the British. Palestinian leaders and the rest of the Arab world need to look at those examples and swallow their pride for the sake of their people. The following are what the Palestinians and all their supporters need to understand as a fact: a Palestinian state based upon the 1967 border will never happen. There will never be a right to return for Palestinian refugees. Jerusalem will never be divided. If those are the red lines that the Israelis will never cross, how can there be peace? I hear you ask. Israel will provide the Palestinians with land the size of the one that was taken from them, but it will never be the exact areas that were taken from the Palestinians if it compromises Israel's security. Of course, in a land swap, the Israelis are going to give them the crappy lands. Big deal. They lost a war and those are the consequences. They need to get over it and start building a life for their people on the crappy lands. Palestinian refugees would receive compensation from the State of Israel, and they can either stay in the countries they already live in or migrate to the newly independent Palestinian state. Millions of Palestinians returning to Israel will threaten community cohesion in the country. Before long the country would descend into civil war. That is a fact, so it will never happen. Palestinians can make Ramallah or any of their cities their new capital and then have free access to Jerusalem, but it would remain the capital of Israel. I expect many people to criticize these proposals as being biased towards Israel. They need to get over it. Justice in the world has always been justice of the victor over the vanquished. Before the Palestinians issue a fatwa for my head, they must understand that I am one of them. I too have been a refugee, living in probably worse conditions than they are currently living in their camps. Besides, I am technically stateless. I carry a Dutch passport, but when I land in Schiphol airport, the immigration officer on duty usually speaks English to me. What that implies is that despite the fact that I am carrying a Dutch passport, I am not one of them. When I land in Liberia, my country of birth, I have to grease the palm of the immigration officer on duty, or else he will give me only 48 hours in the country, which means the following day I have to go to the immigration office to extend my stay in my own country. I write this to say that I am not one of those Westerners relaxing in my cozy apartment in Europe lecturing you on what you are supposed to do. I understand your plight, but I also understand that one cannot eat ideology, neither can you take ideology to the bank. Change the things you can and learn to live with what you cannot change. For Palestinian supporters in the West, before they start their hoopla, they need to take a trip to a Palestinian refugee camp in the West Bank or Gaza and stay with Palestinian refugees for a week. Maybe they will understand my position. It is easy to stay in their cozy apartments in London, Berlin or Paris and call for Palestinian rights while generation upon generation of Palestinian children languish in refugee camps in dehumanizing conditions. They are allowing their anger for Israel or America to cloud their sense of reasoning. The level of concession they expect the Israelis to give to the Palestinians is what they will never demand from their own government. Israel is a powerful nation and she is acting like any other powerful nation. China is doing it in Tibet, Russia is doing it in Chennai. Why do they expect it to be different when it comes to Israel? It is called the Golden Rule, which means the person with the gold makes the rules. A few minutes ago, Euronews has just announced that Serbia's most wanted fugitive General Ratko Mladic has been arrested by the Serbian Authority. I am convinced 24 hours from now he would be transferred to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Does anyone really doubt that the Serbian Authority did not know where he and his co-defendant Radovan Karadzic were? Do you believe Serbian President Boris Tadic wanted to give them up? No. But he knew that if he did not cooperate with the International Criminal Court, his country would never be allowed to join the European Union. Like every leader who cared about the welfare of his people, he took the courageous decision. Palestinian leaders need to visit him for a lesson in courage. Finally, this is a piece of advice for my brother President Obama. Bro, this is a secret between us. Don't tell anyone that I said it. I am just telling you as a brother. If you really feel the need to piss someone off, not the Jews, please, and to do it close to your re-election time, for Christ's sake, what are you thinking? Didn't you see what happened to George Bush Sr.? Thank you for watching. Join us at http://www.theprophetexperts.co.uk.